All right, guys, so in this video, we're going to go into a bit more explanation about how this program achieves what we want it to achieve. So the first thing we're going to notice is that we have set up our configuration here, and we have set up a main class, okay? What is called a class here, we actually have a file, okay? A file is somewhat different from a class. We will see that later on in this course in another section. But for now, you can simply think of class as file. Okay, so we have set our main file as hwkt. But inside this file, how does the system know to actually run this code? Well, the main idea is that here inside the file, we have what we call a function. And a function is basically, we will see this later on in much greater detail in another section, but a function is basically a block of code that we can run in Kotlin. Okay, it's as simple as that. We have some code that we can run and we put it inside what we call a function. Now, to define a function, we simply use a keyword fun. That is what this keyword means. It means that it lets the system know that next after this word comes a function definition. Okay, so we have a function, we have the name of the function, and inside these parentheses, we have what we call the arguments. Now, in this particular case, we do not pass any arguments. We do not give any arguments to our functions, and we do not use any arguments for our functions. Okay, we don't need to because we're simply printing out a standard message. But when we study functions, we will study arguments. We will study how to pass arguments to the functions, how we can use those arguments from the functions, and so on and so forth. Okay, so a lot of detail. This simply says that we have a variable, what we call a variable. A variable is simply a container for some piece of information. So it can be a number, it can be a text like we have here, it can be many things. But this is the name of our variable. It is of type array of strings. Now, I'm not going to go into detail what this means. It's simply a collection of strings. Now, a string is let's say a text, a string of letters. Okay, you can think of a text as a string of letters, HELLO. This is a string. Okay, so we're passing a collection, an array of strings. Now, like I said, don't worry too much about this. If it doesn't make sense, do not worry. We'll go into a lot of details about variables, arrays, strings, and a lot of other things. Okay, so, but just keep in mind that these are the parameters that we pass to our function. Now, this is the function definition, and this is the function block. Okay, so this is the content of the function. And here inside these curly braces, so we have an open brace and a closed brace. Inside, we can put our code. So in this particular case, we have a line of code. We can put other lines of code if we wanted to. We can say print line, second line. Okay, and if we run that, we're simply going to have hello and second line. Okay, so the system runs everything in sequential order. Okay, so it goes from the first, second, and then there's nothing else, so it finishes. And we can put here as many lines of code as we want. Now, I'm just going to remove this second line. We don't actually need it. Now, what does print line mean? Now, print line is a function. Okay, we've seen what a function is. Here we define our function called main. Printline is a function that is already defined that we can use, and it's simply called printline. Printline means that you can print something, okay, like hello Kotlin or whatever you put here, your name. And we also have a new line. Okay, so we can see here that if I just run this as it is now, we have hello, and then we have a new line. The process goes to the next line. If I simply say print, okay, I just have hello and no new line here. Okay, the system introduces a new line when it finishes, but normally we don't have a new line. So if I say again the next line, if it's going to be second line, but it's print, okay, so we don't introduce a new line. We will run this. We will see that both of these are on the same line because they don't create a new line here. Okay, so it's print without a new line. If we say print line, it introduces a kind of new line here. So let's run that again. We can see hello, and then this is actually a second line now because we have a print line here. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Let me just remove this. So this, like we said, is a function. Printline is a function. And we can see that the call to the function printline actually takes one parameter, which is the parameter of what you would like the system to print to the console. Okay, so in the same way that function main has parameters, also printline has a parameter, which is the text that we pass here. Okay, so I hope you can kind of see the connection between the two. Again, don't worry too much if this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We will study this in a lot of detail when we reach functions and variables and parameters and so on and so forth. But this is just to give you an idea. This is how you would call the function called printline. Open a parentheses, pass the parameter, the argument that you want here, close the parentheses, and the system will run this code, will run this function. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's all we have in this simple program. It's just a function that is by default run by the system. Okay, one thing I forgot to tell you, when we have a configuration, when we pass the main class, or like we said, the main file, the system in this main file looks for a function called main that takes this kind of parameters. Okay, so this is a very standard way to have an entry point in your program. Where does the program start? It always starts in the main class or main file in the function main. Okay, this is a standard Kotlin way of running a program. So here you can have many functions. So you can say fun second function. Okay, this function does nothing. And you could have other functions here. But if we run this code with this configuration, even though we don't specify the function that we want to run first, the system automatically picks out the function called main that has these parameters. And that's why the entry point for our code is always here inside this function, not something else we define. All right, so that is kind of everything I wanted to talk about in this video. We will discuss each and every one of these points in greater detail, but I think it's useful at the beginning to kind of understand how the program can start, how you can run a very simple, very basic message output program, and what kind of each element of that program means in the context of this system, okay, in Kotlin. So that's it. We're going to finish this lecture here, and then we're going to continue on in our next lecture to introduce another very useful concept, which is the comment. I will see you there. Hey guys, so this is a bonus video. I want to show you really quickly a quite useful tool sometimes that you can use to test out small code functionality without going through the whole process of creating a new function, a new project, and so on. Okay, so in our IDE, we have what we call a REPL, okay, REPL, which stands for Read, Evaluate, Print, Loop. Okay, Read, Evaluate, Print, Loop, REPL. It's sometimes a standard tool for some development languages, not that many actually, but Kotlin has it. And I want to show you in this video how it works and how you can use it. So in our IDE, we're going to go to Tools, then Kotlin, and we have here somewhere we have Kotlin REPL. Okay, so click on that, and that will simply open up a kind of a window where you can actually run code really quickly. Okay, we can see here a suggestion. I'm on a Mac, so this says Command Enter to execute. If you are on a PC, it's probably something like Control Enter to execute. So here inside this window, we can simply type the text that we want to be executed. So for instance, we have something like print line hello world. Okay, and if I hit Command Enter, sorry, there we have the execution of this code, we get a hello world. Okay, so we don't need to create a new function. We don't need to create a run configuration, a new project, nothing like that. We just run the code here. So we can have something like 1 + 1 command return. That's going to give us 2. Okay, whatever number divided by whatever other number, command return is 1 because it's an integer, and we will discuss this later on. So these are integer numbers, not floating point numbers. Don't worry too much about this. The important thing that this is correct. This is only one time inside this large number. So if we put a large number divided by a small number, then we have command return. We will get another integer that is, it's the correct result of that operation. So this is a very useful tool. You can use it at any point to create or to run rather small bits of code. So if we say something like print line test1 with quotes, test1, and enter, so not command control enter, simply enter, then we have print line second line. Now we can execute 2 lines of code at once. Okay, so now if I hit command enter or control enter on a PC, then we get the 2 lines here. Right, so this is how you would run REPL. This is how the REPL works. It's a kind of a shortcut if you simply want to test out some quick functionality to make sure that everything is fine. We aren't going to be using it extensively in our project. We don't necessarily use it very much. I usually like to test things like this in a different way that I will show you later on in the course. But it's useful to know it's there if you run into it at some point or you want to use it yourself. Go right ahead. It's quite easy to use.